Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Tim Cain reaction, this time on the blame problem. Say hello to Twitch. This is an 9-minute video that I will turn into something probably an hour long. Let's jump in. Let's see what the blame problem is.
Hi, everyone. It's me, Tim.
Hey, Tim!
Today I want to talk about the blame problem.
Yeah.
I have a video called the credit problem, and this video is the opposite. Let's call it a companion video. So, in the credit problem, which I'm linked below, and I really recommend you watch it.
We should watch
but
that
I'm going
too.
to have to summarize some things to put things into context for this video.
Should we watch that one
I
first?
establish how hard it is to give credit for a feature or anything you're trying to do credit for. It's not easy at all. And
No, it's not at all, because I'm a game designer, right, by trade, so I've done a lot of design on systems and whatnot. But that doesn't mean that those systems were my design or my idea entirely. In fact, I would maybe talk to somebody else on the team and they would contribute to that too, or somebody else would give me the idea and I would just be the one to put that on paper, blueprint it, test it out, balance it, all these things. So how do you credit somebody for that? And I think the reality is that if you were a designer, the best thing to do is to never credit yourself. Always credit the team, and if you can attribute an idea very strongly to one person or individual, always give it. That's the way that I operate, because I find that it's the best for me, because it humbles me, it makes sure that I don't have an overlarge ego or pretend that I am the idea person behind the game, because that's not real. But also that by crediting the rest of the team, it makes them have more ownership over the game, and they feel more confident that when they come to me with a really good idea, that it's not going to be taken as my idea just because I'm the designer attached to designing that system. That's at least what I do, and that's what I recommend that other people do too.
Problem is,
Yeah.
when people ask me, hey Tim, who did feature X? It means different things to different people.
Yes.
Some people are talking about the idea, and other people are talking about the implementation, and other people are talking about what it took to actually make that feature shippable, optimizing it or bug fixing it. If you get rid of anything along those steps, you don't get that feature.
Yeah, it's if you're designing a system, it has to go through everybody. I mean, QA, sound design, UI, UX design, the coders, the artists, everybody gets their own chance to contribute to it. And he's right, you can't just take one of those pieces out and have the entire system in its place. So going into the nuance of whose idea a system was or who's responsible for a system is so lacking in nuance that I think you do have to be nuanced about it when you say, well, the entire team worked on it, but it was this person's idea, and then we passed it on, and the sound designer, I don't know, Tim, the sound designer, did a great job with it, and then Tim, the artist, did a fantastic job meshing it and had a really cool idea of how we can optimize the model at distances. I don't know, it's just, game dev is so complex that, yes, when I try to talk about who had the idea for a system, I always try to attribute that, but when it comes to who is responsible for that system, or who is responsible for the implementation of that, that's the entire team, right? And ultimately, if I'm the lead game designer on a project, it is my responsibility to oversee that system and to make sure that it fits within the rest of the game, that it abides by our pillars, that it complements the core loop, and keeps the gameplay flowing naturally. So responsibility versus credit, I don't know, it is a problem. I agree with that.
And the credit video, I specifically talk about Fallout companions, because when people say, hey Tim, I really like the companions in Fallout, who did those? Well, do you want me to talk about the person whose idea it was?
Or who wrote them?
But we decided not to go with it because
yeah.
we knew it was too much work in the time frame we had? Or do you want to talk about the two people who thought it could be done, and just a few months before we shipped, got it working sort of with scripts and baling wire and hope? Do we then want to talk about the people who actually took that implementation, which was caused, as far as I remember, it caused at least one crash, and it also caused issues where the companions would disappear when you cross maps, or they'd lose their inventory. Do you want to talk about the people who actually got it working? Because I don't know what you mean when you're like, "Hey Tim, who got companions in Fallout?"
This is
Because
true too. I mean, you can design the most perfect system in the world, but then only have 2 weeks to implement it and realize that you have to cut that system in half. And that's a tough meeting. That's a tough meeting for me because I'm upset as a designer because I made sure that this system was working properly. I'm upset with myself because at the same time I should have predicted that this would take too much time to implement. That's one of my responsibilities too. Uh, Coders are upset because they know that they don't want to have to come to me with that bad news, but they do, and they have to find a way to cut it down. But ultimately, it's like that sacrifice and it's compromise, and there are some really amazing ideas that can come from the necessity to sacrifice and compromise, that ultimately are better for the game or are ingenious solutions to hide a problem behind the scenes. And I think that those sorts of compromises and solutions do require and deserve the respect and admiration that they have. And I think that you see that often with postmortems. But what gamer is watching a postmortem, right? That's for game developers to watch. But that is also a point where we can provide that to the rest of the players. That's tough. It is a tough thing.
it's all of those people. It's not one of them. And that's the problem with doing blame. Because I know many of you think the companions in Fallout are either annoying, like Ian shooting you in the back, or hard to use because there's no good way to control them or even give them inventory. And how do you assign blame for that? I mean, it wasn't supposed to be a feature in the game. Do you blame the people who tried to jam it in a few months before we shipped? Do you blame the people who didn't get the AI working? The person who didn't get the UIs in to give them control, to give you control over them or to let you manage their inventory? Trust me, there's a lot of credit and blame to go around.
Blame
And
gamers.
that's what I want to talk about today.
Yeah. I've been in situations like that. I've talked about it before. I'm not going to name names. I'm not going to name anything. If you know, you know. If you don't know, you will know. I'm also very distracted by his popsicle shirt, but I love it. Um, I was working on a system once, and it was very castrated. Is that the right word for it? I had to cut down the system pretty heavily because we didn't have enough time to get it out for the milestone for the publisher. And I had the proper design for it sitting in the backlogs, right? It was there, it needed to be touched up, it really needed to be addressed, but it would require a complete overhaul to the system in order to implement. And we knew that the publisher wasn't happy with it because we weren't happy with it either. So we had set aside time to do this overhaul, and it was just kind of sitting there waiting for us to take it and start on it. Well, somebody above me, I'll just put it that way, decided to, without my knowledge, as I was the designer for the game, by the way, I was responsible for all the systems. And if an idea was going to break the game, I was miles above everybody else in knowing that because that was my job. So somebody above me took the system without my knowledge and worked in secret with the programmer to overhaul the system in a way that was incongruent with the rest of the game's design and broke many aspects that were important to the user experience. And I didn't learn about this until the QA friend of mine asked me, hey, is this how the system is supposed to work? So they had gone through the entire design and implementation of it in secret without my knowledge. And it caused so much of a kerfuffle. It took 2 weeks of two people's time to implement this. And it then took 4 additional weeks to revert the change and implement the new one. So it was 6 weeks wasted on something that could have been done in probably 2 to 3 weeks with the proper changes. So there's a lot of stuff like that that happens in game dev, and ultimately that's wasted time that you now have to cut. You have to cut other content because that mistake was made. And sometimes, in a lot of cases, those mistakes are accidental, right? Like a bug. It just gets in there. You didn't program the bug and you didn't do it on purpose. But then there are other cases where there is verifiable idiocy that even at the time when they knew it was a problem, they were defending the solution. And like, I don't know, it's game dev is fucking annoying sometimes. And it's one of those things where in hindsight, yeah, I blame those people, but at the same time, we could also blame production for not having a proper pipeline in place. We can blame leadership for not having the proper communication on this. This all could have been resolved if they had just asked me, hey, I have this idea. Can we do it this way? And I would have said, oh no, that'll break this, this, and this. So how about you just give me some time to do the redesign with the UI designer and we'll get the proper solution in place. And this was right before, by the way, this was right before our early access release. And it was such an important part of the game that we had to release in early access with this botched fuck up. Let's just say that after that, the individual responsible never touched that aspect of the game again, and I was more formalized into a higher leadership position because of that fuck up. Too many people involved, too much bureaucracy. It's why most of the times games suck. Well, like I said, it can happen. Like somebody implements a bug. I don't blame anyone for that, right? Because it's like you didn't intend to do this. You went through the proper channels, and everybody makes bugs. Everybody makes mistakes. But if you opt into going behind the back of somebody that you know is going to be the best person to talk to, and if this could have been resolved by just asking them a single question, to me, that is way more of a fuck up and way more of an important thing to address on a production level than the accidental bug, because everybody is going to make some of those problems. There is someone to be blamed, but they usually get away with it. Well, we did get away with it. And he ended up getting raises and promotions. Everybody makes mistakes. Thor does not. Damn, shots fired. What the fuck you mean ask? Nobody communicates. Well, that was a big problem too. So we had like it was a very corporate way of communication in that company, and this is one of the reasons why, as a company myself with Microraptor Games, I'm trying to encourage a flatter hierarchy, because traditional hierarchies look like this, where you have, the CEO or something. Looks like CFO, but just go with it. And then you have this upper management, right? We'll just put upper. That is 3 P's. That is crazy. That is a lot of upper right there. And we had this rift. We identified that there was this big rift in communication where only a little bit of stuff was trickling down, whatever they wanted to the leads. This is where I sat. I guess now you know the company that I'm talking about. And then you had the, seniors and below. Not to make them seem like they are lesser, it was just about responsibility. Seniors and below. So I was one of the few leads that when I got the information from upper management, I would propagate this down. Yeah, the company food pyramid, exactly. And a lot of people felt like they were left in the dark because they weren't being told, this level of communication that was happening up here, all these special meetings. And so it was just like nobody knew what the goal and intention of the company and what of the game was. And I was even being told not to share some information, and I was doing it anyway because it made everybody just understand what was going on. So, that I think that whole company had communication problems like that. And really what it comes down to is if you can't trust your workers, then why are you hiring them? If you can't treat them like adults, what the hell's going on? I'm sure that on average, the average adult has more stressful issues happening in their daily life than what's happening at work. And if there's bad news, you just say, yeah, look, this is happening. Here's the steps that we're taking to solve it. We'll let you know when we have an update. It's not difficult. Or here's the direction that we're moving in because we think that this aligns with our goals. The problem with this company is, though, it didn't have goals or values. So the direction was whatever direction they wanted to take it in. And that was really confusing to people because you had people on one side of the team that were very passionate people, right? They were moving in this direction. These were passionate game devs. They wanted to make good games. Imagine that says passionate. And you had other people who were, this was their job. They don't give a shit about the game they're making. This is just the thing that pays the bills. And there's no bad thing here. but it pulls the company in two different directions, and ultimately you have a CEO who was unable to know which direction to move in, and realistically he ended up moving it in this direction, and a lot of the people that are passionate left, like myself. So when you have a company like that, you need to set very specific goals and values of what the company is actually aimed at, and you need to hire people that are congruent with those goals and values. That is why you have them. That is why when you hire somebody, you say, hey, we are a company that is about transparency, collaboration, and ethics. If you are not passionate about game dev, I do not want to see you in my company. If you do not care about treating the players with respect and giving them high quality products, I do not want to see you in my company. Bye bye. Go work somewhere else. It sounds harsh, but that's how we get people who are all aligned with the same vision and the same goal. Last time I went to my boss and told him, hey, I'm having some personal things going on in my life and I might need some time. He literally looked at me and said, how is that my problem? Okay, I mean, that's a separate thing. That is really fucking annoying, though. Goal is money, values is money. Yeah, for that company, it definitely was.
Is I don't think
Sorry,
that
Tim.
you can assign individual blame to any one person for an entire game,
I agree.
or even I've seen a game company.
Yeah, I mean, and people often like to do this with games where they say, oh, this was clearly the case of upper management. And it's like, well, what is it? Anybody who's worked in game dev knows that it's not like it's just the publisher's fault that a game is rushed out the door and shit. There's blame all along that. And yeah, there's some force that goes on. There's some tug and pull, some push and pull. It is what it is. But I don't think that the blame can be assigned in one particular direction. I think people like to say, oh, it was the publisher's fault that the game was this bad. Well, if you look behind the scenes, I guarantee that you'll find a lot of really bad decisions being made from upper management of that company, and even some bad decisions being made from the workers of that company, right? Accidents, either forceful, maybe a bit of like laziness, or a bit of, you have a couple of programmers who are dispassionate towards the game or are burnt out and they're still being forced to work, so they're just not very efficient. You know what? Yeah, this can all trickle back down to production problems, and maybe you blame the producer, but the producer's doing what the game director is being told, and the game director is doing what the CEO is being told, and the CEO might be making those bad decisions or being told to make them by the publisher. They're the daddy, they're the ones that feed you, so they get to make that call in the end. If a publisher is publishing your game, they own the game. You do not. They are hiring you to work on the game. They have bought the game from you and are hiring you to work on it. That's how it works. So what they say goes, and you can try to convince them, but if they make a bad decision, that's on them. But also, they can say things that are good too. I've had tons of publisher decisions that were good for us, or publishers that when I told them, hey, look, we need to make this concession, I think that it's more important to deliver feature A than feature B, even though I know you really want feature B, and they've said, okay, that's fine. We can cut feature B then. So it's way more nuance behind the doors, and I don't like to say that it's always the publishers that are at fault.
And do not misunderstand me, because I have told you on this channel that there are people that I absolutely hated working with, and
Same.
people that I said I would never work with again. And I even mentioned some of them don't know that. I just never worked with them again. Some of the people I hate, they know I hate them. But let me tell you something. I don't want them to occupy a lot of space in here.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes when I talk about things, it's because it was in my notes, and I look at it, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that. But I don't walk around going, Urgh. There are people that were so awful to work with that I've never even named them on this channel. They're just pitiful excuses for human beings, but I've never mentioned them on this channel because I want them away. Even those people, I don't think the games they worked on were made worse because of them.
Well, some of them can just be bad teammates, right? There's tons of workers that are either decent at their job or even good at their job. I know my dad owns a company. He's had this problem before, and I've worked at places where we've had this problem where You can be the greatest game developer in history. If you are a bad teammate, you will never be hired by me, and you'll never be hired by a lot of companies. Because ultimately, they need you to work in a team, they need you to communicate, they need you to be independent but collaborative. And if you cannot be collaborative and are just entirely independent, this is what's called, like a maverick, right? Somebody who just goes above and beyond, does their own thing, sees himself as the main character, and yeah, nobody has time for that. Like, you need to work, you need to accept responsibility and say, okay, I made this mistake, I'll fix it. Just do it. I've been a terrible teammate. Sometimes that is team size. Yeah, team size can be a big factor too. Because they are rich and can sue him. I don't think so. I think speaking about your personal experiences with workplaces is different than saying that the company, like, than trying to bring down the company's value. I don't know. People can sue for anything, but that doesn't mean they'll win.
Worse because of them. In fact, for one of them, he made the game better. I cannot deny it. His work was good. I just never want to work with him again. Some of those people still make games, and at least one doesn't, and I can guess a really good reason why, but I don't care. I don't want to work with him again. I don't want to think about him again, and it's done. But even then, I wouldn't ever assign them blame like I see what's going on online, where I see articles and hours-long videos where they're saying this one person is to blame for this game being bad. I've even seen them say this one person is responsible for making an entire game company bad. And let me just tell you, no. No. Nothing is that simple. If you've heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect, then one thing that should give you pause is whenever you think there should be a simple explanation for something, it's probably not the explanation that's simple, it's you. Because
Damn, shots fired. Also, I completely agree. I think that everything requires nuance. And it really is. If you're in game dev and you've worked with a publisher, you've worked past 5 years, you'll know that every single person, well, it used to be the case, every single person on a game dev team was human. Nowadays, there is some AI, unfortunately, but everybody's human and everybody has the same capacity for mistakes. And most of the time, if you hire a team of extremely passionate people that want to make a fantastic game, I guarantee you, 99.9% of those problems and mistakes and bugs are accidental. And throwing around blame is not going to help anyone. It is a waste of your time. It is a waste of a meeting minute, because if you have 10 people on a meeting for a minute, that's 10 minutes of man hours that you're paying for, or man minutes in this case. And why would you waste it when you say, okay, we have this problem, who wants to fix it? You don't say, hey, we had this bug, I think you made it, you want to apologize for this bug? Just say, okay, we've logged the bug, somebody can take it when they can. Oh, I'll take it because I worked in the system, so I probably created it. I'll fix it. Just do it. Just do the thing, and nobody's going to look down on you because everybody knows that they have the same capacity for creating bugs as you do. It is what it is. Situation isn't simple, you're simple. Yeah, do that Uno reverse right there.
Very few complex problems, whether it's economics or game development, have a simple solution.
It's human relationships.
If you think the president sets the price of gas or even the price of eggs, you're wrong.
I need to have Tim repeat that, because that is so important to politics and to games as a whole. Please preach, Tim.
Whether it's economics or game development, have a simple solution. If you think the president sets the price of gas or even the price of eggs, you're wrong. And not because economics is not that simple, and you just can't order a price to exist.
You can't order a chicken to lay more eggs. The egg laying one was really interesting because they had a bird flu going around, right? And they had to euthanize all the chickens. And you'll notice that for some random magical reason, the price of eggs went down in suspiciously the same amount of time that it takes for a new chicken to turn into an egg-laying hen. Nah. No coincidence. Only communist chickens can do that. Oh, I see. He tries, at least with tariffs. No, but it's just people don't like to talk about nuance, because talking about nuance means that you have to try to understand something. And trying to understand something means that you are accepting vulnerability that you might be wrong. And people don't want to do that because that makes them vulnerable and then other people attack them. Now, I can accept the idea that you might be scared to be vulnerable because you are surrounded by people who will attack you if you show vulnerability. And just don't surround yourself with people that will attack you if you are vulnerable. And you can build a team that is like this. The problem is when you build a team with those sorts of like internal cliques and hierarchies and toxic drama, toxic positivity, maverick and martyr behavior, it's not good. You should never do that, and you should fire people that are actively engaging with that, no matter how great of a worker they are. They're not there to actually build a positive team. They're not there to stomp on their egos and just try to make a good product. They're there to try and rule, to climb the ladder. This isn't it. This isn't it. And I've worked at companies that were like that, and they were absolutely toxic filled, horrible, horrible places.
Markets are complex. Trust me, I'm a bad businessman. Complex markets are what did me in. So when I tell you that nothing is that simple, you should also remember that I have a whole video on ideas of mine that were rejected and either nothing went in or got replaced, even when I was the director on the project. As far back as Fallout and as recently as The Outer Worlds, I had my own ideas rejected. I was told for good reason. I have a whole video on that. So if a game director can't get everything in that they want, I don't think even a game director can take a great game and make it horrible.
Well, just because you're a game director doesn't mean that you have that. Yeah, the buck stops with you, but you also have to choose, okay, do we force this in and delay a milestone? Let's go talk to our publisher. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Publisher, can we delay the milestone by 2 weeks to finish up a important feature? No. Okay, so you either do it and piss off the publisher and maybe delay a payment for 2 weeks, meaning that you might miss a payment to your workers. Now you have to tell your workers that they're not going to get paid for the month, or they're going to get paid less. Or you just say, okay, let's cut the feature. Hey, Paxing Games. A few weeks ago, I binged the Tim Dude's videos and still not even close to done. He makes such great digestible videos, doesn't he? I love his videos. Tim is great.
Because
I'm going to try to reach out to him this year and see if he'll come onto the stream and talk with me about game design for a few hours.
There's a whole lot of hands that work on this thing that handle all the different parts of art and design and code and production and audio and QA and localization and everything. And all those things have to be done well to get a great game. And I don't think any one person is capable of tearing down that entire production line. Now, I realize...
No, I mean, holding it up maybe, like you might have something delayed. But if you build your company correctly, you can minimize that, especially by sharing knowledge. And that's one of the things that building up a team, it's very difficult to do, because if you're like a junior in... There's nothing more vulnerable than being a junior in the game dev industry. And if you hire a team and you have a corporate structure that's based on this strict hierarchy of going up the ladder to make more money and get raises and shit like that, then you kind of encourage people to hoard that knowledge and not share it with others, because then that means that somebody else knows what they do and they're not as special, right? Paxton Games, thank you for the follow as well. I appreciate that. So you need to find a way to build up a flatter hierarchy that encourages sharing knowledge and makes people not feel like they have to worry about their job by sharing those secrets that they've built, or those methodologies that they've built. That's not easy to do. That's really, really, really difficult to do. And it takes time. It takes time to share knowledge, right? Make a presentation or have a talk with your team, or sit down with somebody who's less knowledgeable and just talk to them. But if you can encourage that and you can build it properly, you'll come out with a team that just grows and grows and grows, almost exponentially so, and knows enough that if somebody has to take a vacation or gets hurt or something and can't work for a week or two, then usually you can fill in the gaps here and there, or you can, reroute the production schedule a bit. So It's just tough. Game dev is not, a formulaic. It's not simple to do, and it does require a team structure that is built in a way that accommodates those sorts of unexpected circumstances and happenings. It's also worth remembering that director roles vary wildly studio to studio. Some treat it as a producer role, others throw it at anyone who directs other workers. That's true too. Yeah, that's a really good point, Others like, and I've seen it in both cases. And sometimes I've worked at a place where the CEO was working on the code with me on a feature because he had some time. He wanted to work with me, and that was part of the onboarding. But also, he was a coder before he was a CEO. So I will say that I worked very shortly at that company. That was one of the best experiences I've ever had. Was with that, where I could just feel like, let's just share information and let's just be honest with each other. And oh, that's a bug. Okay, you can fix it. Awesome, cool. I love it.
Explanations for things are attractive. You want there to be a simple explanation, but there just isn't. And I made that credits video a long time ago, and I realized I never really talked about the opposite, which is blame. If you're trying to figure out why some feature in a game isn't working, it's probably not one person, because everyone has a boss who probably went, hey, I need that fixed. Or a lot of people have people under them that go, I know what you said, but we did it this way because that way crashed, or that way doesn't work, or there's no time to make a UI to do it that way, so we're doing it this way.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes way more sense to me than
there's never time for the UI that you want. It's always going to be up to your UI designer. Like, we can't go that complex. Go with something more simple. Transparency, mutual collaboration, and benefit is difficult in capitalist society. I don't think so. I don't think it has anything to do with capitalism. I think you can get great team environments in a company that still prioritizes or knows that it is a business first and it needs to make money and support its workers.
Do it that way, so we're doing it this way. And that makes way more sense to me than one person single-handedly destroyed a project. Because if that can happen, I've never seen it happen. And I hear lots of videos from people who've never made a game before who are telling you one person is responsible for a game being bad or an entire company being terrible.
Or they'll just blame blindly, oh, upper management pushed the game out, and it was like, oh, but the investors, oh, the publisher or something. And it's like, yeah, but it's so many things can happen. I mean, you might just have somebody who doesn't do a job very well, or maybe lied on their resume and some shit. It's like, ugh, blame capitalism. I mean, blaming capitalism is the same kind of, in my opinion, the lack of nuance to investigate. I've never seen. I agree with Tim. I've never seen the case where one person is responsible for something being bad or even a game being bad. It's always multi-factored, and oftentimes it's just external pressures can be really high. If you have investors or in the company, or you have a publisher and investors, then you have so many people outside of the game dev sphere putting pressure on it to release during a certain quarter. I mean, hell, Baldur's Gate 3 was released too soon. They cut content to release that game sooner. They promised the upper city. They didn't deliver. They said the game was ready a month early. That was a lie. They just didn't want to compete with Starfield's release. In hindsight, they probably didn't have to worry, but they did worry at the time. And in order to keep the game, to keep the company alive for another quarter, they would have had to then release the game in December. That's a horrible time to release a game. You have Steam sales, you have people on holidays. You don't have a lot of people buying games like crazy at these times. Okay, then let's delay the game by another quarter, so half a year delay. Well, what does it take to run Larian Studios with 500 people for half a year? Let's even go super conservative estimate. 500 people working on Baldur's Gate 3 times, let's say, an average salary of 60,000 divided by 2 for half a year, plus some overhead costs for additional taxes and costs, and then renting out spaces around the world. Do we have $20 million in the budget to extend the game by half a year? No. let's just release it now and fix the bugs and hope that people don't get to Act 3 fast enough to see all the problems that the game has. And honestly, that was probably the right call. Hey, Pepetsu, no, it's not capitalism. Yeah, I think it's. I don't think so. I don't think capital. I think people mistake capitalism for cronyism, and I think that cronyism, greed, and mismanagement can happen in any political society because it is a human problem, not a structural problem. Most of the situations I've been in were all to blame belongs to one person. The teams were either really small or the person in question was at least a senator. Well, also, you could just have a case where that person is such a large, overbearing um, individual in the team that really what they should have been done was fired. Listening, but I missed it. Is this about learning in BG3? Yes. I was sad the Upper City wasn't there. BG3 was a straight up hands down masterpiece of a game. I think that it was a pretty awesome game with a pretty okay story. I think that I will say this from everything Larian Studio talked about, I think that they weren't the ones to decide to push the game out sooner than they wanted. I don't think it was them, and I think that's why they're never going to do another Hasbro licensed game ever again. And I don't blame them. Another person did things over a long period of time, so it was one person's fault, but what they did wrong was 20 years of work culture instead of individual actions or decisions. That too. Pardon me, Bearfucker, do you need assistance? You're my hero. Finally, someone on Twitch said it. It's crony capitalism, greed. That is the problem. Yeah, I think that, there's a certain amount of oversight and regulation that can help to minimize that. And I'm very anti-monopolistic, right? I don't think anybody should have that much control. And that's what monopoly laws were supposed to prevent. But they just haven't been upheld. And then you have so much money circulating in government that they're just going to protect themselves. And here we are. It's not like anybody can start a corporation for like $100. It doesn't mean that you have to run your company like an absolute buffoon, and it doesn't mean that you have to be a greedy asshole. It's just that to some extent the loopholes that are taken advantage of and the way to make money is you're almost encouraged to be a piece of shit, careless, unethical person in order to succeed. And we see that in game dev too. I'm a capitalist. I'm not greedy either. And in order to succeed, because of the amount of control that people have over the money at the higher ends, the money isn't being filtered down to the small indie devs or the AA teams that have, that want to take that risk but also have a pretty high potential ROI. It's being fed to the AAA companies that play it safe. Make a game based off of a formula, spend $100 million and make $200 million in profit or something, but that isn't really working anymore. So it's hard to make money and do it in a way that's ethical, but if you can do it in the way that's ethical, you will inevitably be, I think, happier as a human being. It is what it is. Tough world.
Here's a simpler explanation. The next time someone tells you GameX is bad because of one person, they're trying to make money. They're either trying to sell you something or they're trying to get clicks so they make money. Because
that's universal, by the way. That isn't just with game dev. If anybody says, vote me for president, I am going to cut student loan debt. I'm going to remove your debt with student loans. Please vote for me. We are going to send you $1,000 every month for universal basic care. Please vote for me. They're making promises so that they can get your vote. And then they go in and they realize, oh, that's actually kind of against the laws of the country. Oopsies, didn't know that. Yes, they did. They just wanted your vote. They want money and power. That's all they want. If you can get that high up in politics, it's because you are good at sucking ass, you don't give a shit about people, you love money, you love power, and you're willing to play the game. That's it. Anybody who has any actual care, the people that you actually want in government are the people who are so far away from government. They're your grandma and your grandpa. They are your next door neighbor. They are the janitor that cleans up your school. Those are the people that you want in power because they are the ones who would actually try to do something that's for the betterment of society. The problem is that they would take away power and control from the people who love it. Hoard it. Like a dragon.
Nothing is that simple. But that explanation is So remember, blame is hard to assign, just like credit. People who are trying to do that, I think, have other motives for trying to get you to believe that. And if you're watching them or reading their site, you're helping that. You're not helping the game industry get better.
Yeah.
You're basically helping people focus on something that isn't the problem.
Well, it's the same thing too. If you even want to say like the DEI bandwagon, see woman in game, therefore bad. DEI, they must have forced her in, or they must have a writer that is just. It's the same kind of reductive nonsense that doesn't help anybody's concern. And it becomes so extreme and reductionist that now you can't even talk about it in a nuanced way and say, yes, this was an example of what is kind of verifiably or very provably forced inclusivity that was never about actually writing good characters, versus this is literally just a woman in a game and now we're upset about it. What's this about women in video games, right? No, it's just it's reductionary, reductivist. I don't know. There's a word for it, and it kind of happens everywhere because people want to believe that they're right, so they don't care about the nuance. They just say what they think, and then you call them out on their bullshit. And it's like, oh well, it's just what I heard. It's like, okay, so you didn't actually care about being right. You just wanted to partake in the mudslinging, right? Man, humans really love to play dirty and revel in the mud pits and throw it around and then point at other people who are muddy and say, hey, why are you muddy? Why aren't you clean? As they stand there dripping in mud of their own creation. I care about being right now, of course.
And that's just going to ultimately make things worse. That's why a lot of times when I talk on about development here and I'm talking to game players and not game developers, I try to tell you what you can do to try to make the game industry better. And there's so much negativity, and I get it. People are angry, but that won't necessarily make the game better. Being constructive will.
Yeah, and it won't make the industry better either. And the same is true with Stop Killing Games as well. I think there's extreme people on both sides that aren't helping the conversation, and they aren't actually trying to lead to a better solution. They want their cake and to eat it too, and this side wants their cake and to eat it too, and nobody's willing to just say, well, you know what? We probably shouldn't give up certain things because that will negatively affect the industry. And then this side is like, well, we just, nobody wants to compromise. God damn it.
Ugh. Necessarily have to be positive.
I'm angry,
but you
Tim.
have to be constructive.
You made me angry.
So anyway, that's why I wanted to say that blame assignment is just as hard as credit assignment. And I hope you understand now.
I really appreciate that. That was a great video, Tim. And if you guys like that, please go give Tim a love, a subscribe. Go do it. And if you're watching on YouTube, thank you for watching that one. I really appreciate it. Bye-bye, YouTube.